Test, test, test. Testosterone. Test, test, test. Testosterone. Can you hear me? Is there anybody out there? Or should I stop doing this immediately? Back to bed? Or go to bed or whatever? Let me see if I can read comments. If not, we'll see what happens. Anyway, I hope there's someone out there, and I hope that someone can hear me. You know, someone like Jeroen who went to find beer. I hope you found beer. You'll see. So far, it's not showing anything, but that is to be feared. Yeah, there you are, Jeroen. I hope you found your beer. And if you can hear me, I guess we'll do the thing that we always do, which is cheers. And Kadia. Nice to see you here. I hope you're having a nice, whatever it is today, 30th of December. Time is so weird today. Also, I'm just very tired. Which is why we don't have a Christmas video today. Because I'm back. Hey, Ori, how are you feeling today? As tired as I am, or less tired? Oh, Ben, how are you doing? Having breakfast here, or having a proper breakfast? Well, I guess it's sort of early morning, I guess. Not early morning, mid morning for you, I guess. Oh no, I hope you won't get a headache from like the stout beer. That would not be good. So yeah, as I said, I did not manage to record a proper Christmas video today. It would be about Exile, which is the second book in the second trilogy. But yeah, I'm struggling. I'm struggling with the fact that I need to figure out what to sing, or whether I should stop doing the stupid song intro. Um, it's a bit of a drag now, and it gets longer and longer every time, which I guess was the point when I came up with that whole idea of like 12 days or like 13 days of Christmas and shit like that. The problem with like dumb jokes is suddenly you realize they're, you know, they require more effort than you might think. And that's sort of where I am right now. So we will see. My sound is a bit shitty today. That's interesting. I'll try to figure out what's going on there. I wonder what's going on there. Maybe it's an issue. I remember it also being a bit shady or problematic with like the Griffith thing. Maybe it's a cable question, because otherwise I don't know. Sorry. Maybe I need a new audio cable for my microphone. I just hope it's not the actual microphone, because my camera dying is already bad enough. Is it better now, or am I still? Because the problem is I can't hear the output, so I'm sort of doing this blind. Sorry. There's some burning when I talk. Interesting. Better now? Does it change anything? It's interesting. As I have the main problem is I can't hear the output. So interesting. Technology. Certainly one of the things that made 2023 such a beautiful year, right? So I guess we'll just have to go with this, and I'll figure out how what's the issue over time. Because I'm certainly not good at this stuff. That that's sort of like when I really envy like big YouTubers and whatnot. They have like people dealing with that crap for them, like doing technology stuff in the video editing, making sure the sound works. I wish I had that. But yeah, I guess I'll have to figure out what's up with the microphone thing over time. All right. Anyway, so yeah, no Christmas today. I read Exile. I kind of know what I want to talk about, but I'm super exhausted. It just didn't feel right, and I couldn't come up with a good joke for the intro song, and then it was already too late. It was like 8:30, and I'm like, I won't be done with this in like half an hour. Even then, I would have to render it. And I guess the goal is to wake up early tomorrow and record 2 of those videos. We will see. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying the Christmas videos very much, and it's actually worth doing that. It just made me think. See, like one of the things that I found out with the Christmas things, like I started thinking of this as like a fun joke, making a bunch of making fun of bad books that I read as a child and remember as not being very good. And I'm like, yeah, why not? People are doing it for teenager dystopian novels. Maybe we can do that for teenage murder hobo stories as well. And yeah, I don't know. Then it turned into something way more serious, and now I'm struggling with with doing it justice instead of just fucking around, which is a bit of a problem. But I tend to struggle with in general. Anyway, I think what we'll do today is a bit, talking about 2023, all the stuff y'all did, the books you liked in particular, the books I liked in particular, and what will happen in 2024. And then we'll talk a bit about Chris, and we'll talk a bit about publishing in general and the world. And at some point, I'll just, I don't know, probably explode because of too much beer. We'll see. So yeah, I've been, looking at BookTube over the last week, and there's all these, different lists and stuff. And as you all know, I'm obviously a huge fan of making lists and making my 10 favorite books, my 5 favorite series, my all of that stuff. I'm obviously really good at that, so I haven't made one. But I figured, looking a bit back at what happened last year might be an interesting thing, because stuff has. I feel like the channel has changed over the last year, as it usually does, because I change sometimes. The underworld is kind of dystopian. Yeah, Jeroen, I agree. It's like, I think, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I've read them so I can talk about them, but it's not something I enjoy doing. It's similar to my experience with watching Gone with the Wind, which is, a terrible movie. I mean, I've seen it, so I can talk about it. I'm glad I have seen it. The experience wasn't exactly good. And I feel Driz books are a bit like that, because there's sort of that one thing that so many people, like now in their 30s and 40s, have read at some point when they're fantasy fans, and especially if they played Dungeons and Dragons. Everyone has read these books, and everyone has put them aside. I was like, well, they're slightly cringy, maybe, but I really enjoyed them as a kid. And then no one ever questions what's actually going on in these books, and that's sort of like what I found out when I did the reading. Was like, okay, there's stuff to be angry about. And then I found out that it's probably more than just making fun of bad writing. And don't get me wrong, there's enough bad writing in these books as well. So I'm stuck with this idea of once again making something very serious, turning something that could have been fun into something very serious. And I'll see if I can, turn that into like a larger thesis at the end of the whole thing. But Exile, the one that I read today or reread today, is incredibly repetitive and boring already, and I know it will not go get much better in the next couple of books. That's kind of the problems. Like I know things will only get more boring over time. Um, you mean like the Underdark with dystopian? I don't know if it's dystopian. I think it's more. Yeah, I think the Underdark is just. It's sort of weird because it's like, hey, let's make this an evil society, and then you come up with, well, something that you already live in, but you can't just go, well, you know what? Constant competition and ruthlessness is kind of fucked up. You have to explain that it's also actually capital E evil. So it, it's not a criticism of, not actual criticism of the society you live in. That's sort of the fascinating thing with, especially the way Salvatore handles the Underdark there. I hope that makes sense. I have not read the books by Anne Bishop. I can tell you the matriarchy, so-called matriarchy in Menzo Berenzan, the Drow Underdark, is incredibly primitive, like crude. Like the description is incredibly crude. That's certainly something I'll have to talk about when I talk about Exile tomorrow morning, I guess. Um, the way it is, I don't know how, you know, it, everyone is just like mean all the time. Just because they're mean on purpose. There's like no like actual deeper motivation beyond wanting to be evil and powerful and enjoying cruelty. And I'm like, that's not good. It's I know I regret saying that, right? I've been so critical the of Wheel of Time and the way Robert Jordan writes his totally the Aes Sedai. Aes Sedai, that's right. Writes the Aes Sedai as an evil matriarch. But he's literary fiction levels of nuance compared to how Salvatore describes it. That's kind of frightening. That's how bad it is. And yeah, I don't know. It's been not very fun to read that stuff. Hey, Matty, um, how are you doing today? Yeah, Daniel, I think it's very much that he's unaware of, or like not. Um, I don't even know if it's just like unaware of it, or there's a lot of things going on there. On the one hand, because these were published by TSR, I have no idea what kind of things he's allowed to actually put in these books and not, because they are still marketed to like their main demographic in the late 80s, early 90s, which is teenage kid, well, YA basically. So obviously there's stuff he can't pull off, which I don't know what these things are, because obviously I haven't read like their editing guidelines from like the late 80s, right? So it may just be that our, explicit, social criticism is something that he's not allowed to do, or maybe he's just not capable of it, because at this point in time, R.A. Salvatore is not a very skilled, he's not a very experienced author, he's not a very experienced writer, and you can tell when he comes up right up to like the levels of his craft at that time, right? For example, the thing I mentioned when I talked about the Halfling's Gem, where he sets up that whole situation with the scimitar that does absorb fire damage, and he sets that stuff up really well. But he then also explains it in exhaustive detail to the audience, It's not even Bruno thinking about it, right? It's like Bruno thought it was his armor, but it was truly the scimitar on his back. And I'm like, that's objectively bad writing. That's someone being insecure about his ability to set up something. Um, and with like the early Drizzt novels, you encounter. I feel there's a lot of moments where you can tell that Salvatore is incredibly rushed in putting out the books, but also very much struggling. You know, like with his own like levels of confidence, what he can pull off and what not. So he opts for making things incredibly explicit when he can do that, and ignoring other things when he maybe just doesn't feel confident enough to actually put in that level of like criticism or whatever. Maybe that's a part of it. I don't know, or maybe he's just not aware of it or aware of what he's doing. Hey, also, I just saw that you're also there. Nice to see you. How are you doing? Still house sitting, or are you back at work today? So yeah, I think that's sort of the issue with a lot of these early Drizzt books, especially the first trilogy, the Icewind Dale trilogy. Obviously, the second one struggles with all these other problems with him having, only one character who is incredibly boring as a character. He's not even cheap, he's not even funny in a bad way like Bruno or whatever. Drizzt is just like an empty slate because he's so stoic and whatnot. It's the same thing with like say, yeah, probably Aragorn, who's supposedly the inspiration. Like Aragorn is not an interesting, or Strider is not that interesting character in the first part of the Fellowship. He kind of becomes an interesting character once you have all that background knowledge and whatnot. Usually, he doesn't actually do that much. And he tells stories, but we don't learn much about him as a character. Yeah, the problem with Stoicism, right? It's like, or the way Stoicism is portrayed in fiction or in this kind of fantasy fiction. It doesn't actually lead to a lot of memorable moments beyond just badassery with weapons, and yeah, that gets really boring after a while as well. Yeah, Matt, that's a good question. Why I read bad books? So there's a simple answer, and then there's a more complex answer for that. I think the simple answer is that I had read these books as a kid and just wanted to, look at them again, maybe poke some fun at my earlier, naivete as a young reader and stuff like that. Also, I bought all of them on Audible in a fit of nostalgia a couple of years ago, and then never got to them. So I figured I might as well actually read them or listen to them now that I've spent all that money on them. And also, I thought it might just be fun for people to look at something that has had this kind of influence and poke a little fun at it. That's sort of where it started. And then, of course, the dark secret is I came up with that dumb wordplay of Christmas instead of Christmas, and then I had to just do that um, because the way Terry Pratchett has damaged my brain. Like I have a terrible joke. I need to kind of do something with it. And the complex answer, I think, is that um, I do believe this kind of goes back to something that Nikolai Griffith talked about when we in our conversation, right? It's like that every book changes the reader. Of course, it does, right? So bad books change readers as well, and we need to be aware of that. I think reading bad books can help us grow as people if we recognize what is bad in them. And that's sort of the problem when you look at stuff like the Drizzt novels or Wheel of Time, maybe, or other stuff that I sometimes read where I think it's bad, like Dan Simmons being another case there, right? Um, and like the general discourse online, for whatever reason, is people just praising these books and thinking they're the best thing ever. the most complex science fiction novel ever, Ilium, supposedly, according to one booktuber who shall be, well, fuck, it's worth a time. Who doesn't know what he's talking about in that? Point is, if that is the image or the interpretation that people get fed through booktube, bookstagram, book talk, or whatever, then we have a bit of a problem, because that does not necessarily make it easier for people coming new to these books to take lessons out of that. If you just read the Drizzt novels and think, well, there's some cool action scenes in there, on the surface that is fine, but you will still also take in all the thoughtless, mindless cruelty, all the casual cruelty, all the misogyny, all the Orientalism, all the racism. You will still take that in, and it may not turn it will not turn anyone into like a full-on racist immediately, but these things kind of settle in our minds. So I feel it's important to point these things out. It's like, yeah, I have that sense of self-righteousness or righteous anger that comes with me reading these books and seeing the discourse being so incredibly uncritical sometimes. I'm like, now someone has to talk about this, and I guess it's me at the moment. I think that's sort of where this comes from in a lot of ways. Also, it seems when I read bad books, way more people feel the urge to then also read these books, or at least talk about it, than when I talk about books that I loved, because usually very few people react to it in any way. So there might be that sense that like being angry about something seems to be interesting or entertaining for the fair to people, whereas being nice about books, or at least me being nice about books, seems to be incredibly boring for other people. I don't know. No, he could not have brought up the state of gas marriage in Draw Society. I doubt that. All right, Jerome. I think Robert Jordan is a far more experienced writer. And he's got a lot of problems, don't get me wrong. But he does know how to write prose. It's not, nothing spectacular in a lot of ways, but he does know how to write novels. He also, compared to the early Drizzt novels, he's far less rushed. As in, like, Crystal Shard was written in like 2 months. You can tell. It has terrible editing. And I know people always trash the editing. I've certainly done that of Wheel of Time in some parts, with Harriet, whatever her surname is, Jordan's wife, Robert Jordan's wife, being the editor and whatnot. She gets a lot of shit, and deservedly so in some regard in later novels, but there is still a level of professionalism there that you don't see in the Crystal Shard or the Drizzt novels. They are partly that maybe because they're sort of like YA novels, basically. Um, they use a much simpler vocabulary. They are even more explicit when it comes to doing the tell, don't show kind of thing, when it comes to the motivations and so forth of characters. So there's a lot of stuff that is even more simplistic, more crude in a way, much cruder than Wheel of Time. Uh, when it comes to attitudes, um, and themes like misogyny and so forth, these two are much more like on the nose, or much cruder in the Drizzt novels, because they are just they're basically well, usually each of these Drizzt novels is just a collection of very unrealistic fight sequences where Drizzt, and sometimes in later books, obviously his companions, get to be incredible badasses and kill hundreds of enemies and so forth. And there's a very thin kind of plot that's keeping them moving. And usually you just get told how they feel about how they have to move on and so forth, because none of these motivations are ever properly set up. Wheel of Time, in that regard, is much better. The characters do have like proper motivations and so forth. I think there's a lot of things to be criticized about Wheel of Time, but it is far more competent, really, written as series in general. And I think that's how I would compare them in a lot of ways. Robert Jordan is not well. Robert Jordan is a good craftsman. I think that's sort of the point. Similar to what I would, from my experience, say about Brandon Sanderson. They know how to write sentences that make sense. They know how to sort of set up character motivation and things like that. Salvatore does not necessarily do that. He gets better with some of it later on, but usually he's just not. Maybe also because these novels are so short, he just doesn't have enough time, or doesn't give himself or his novels enough time to actually explore motivations or explore character growth or character changes in a lot of ways. So a lot of these things seem to come out of the blue because he just has roughly there are 100,000 words each, I guess, roughly, sort of. So he has 300 pages, and he needs to get in these 5 huge battles. And he also needs to get in, a lot of travel. He needs to mention a bunch of monsters and other sort of set pieces, because this is still supposedly a tie-in for the Forgotten Realms products. And that means that he just has to tell you explicitly how a character feels, because he doesn't have time to do that. And it's well, what happened in the last 10 chapters made Driz change his mind to this. And I'm like, okay, you didn't show me that. You didn't have the space or the time or whatever to show me that. So you just tell me that he changed his mind because of this, and then you just say it out loud. And it feels unrealistic in that regard, because he tells you something that he's not showing in the little showing that he does. And I think that's something that Jordan is much better at. His showing is unrealistic. His characters are unrealistic, but at least they do slowly change. That's how I would compare those. I hope that makes it a bit clearer. But that's the other part. Both of these authors have been incredibly influential on a lot of fantasy, because they've been very formative throughout the early 90s. They were pushed heavily to a lot of people, and especially the Driz novels were cheap. They sold a lot of copies. I said in the Homeland book, it has almost 88,000 ratings on Goodreads, and 4.26, almost 4.3 rating on Goodreads out of 88,000. That's a shitload of books. And that's a shitload of ratings for something that is over 30 years old. And I think that makes these books important, whether they're good or bad. Yeah. It just makes them necessary, or unnecessary. It makes necessary to talk about them from time to time, because they have had such a huge impact. And when you go to other YouTubers who have made videos on the Crystal Shard or on any of these elf books, you'll always find a lot of comments of people going "Hey, finally you're talking about this. It's awesome. I love these books so much." There's a lot of, very positive feelings about these books. Often it's sort of "Yeah, well, I probably wouldn't read them anymore because I'm 30 years older now." But there's a lot of nostalgia in these books that I think is important to sort of dispel up to a point. I hope that explains why I'm doing this up to a point. And I think, I kind of talked about it yesterday, and it's certainly something that I've been thinking about this year, because I did read, books on fandom studies, on fan culture, fan labor, fan fiction, and so forth. And there is something to be said on how both role-playing games and role-playing game fiction are similar in some respects to what fan fiction would do, just for a different audience. I think it helps to kind of look at these books through that lens to see what that does. Um, Okay, I didn't know that my favorite booktubers said that. Also, I will say this: I'm not a huge fan of the Lies of Lochlamora. They are, however, better written. The Lies of Lochlamora and the next one are better. Like Scott Lynch knows more words than R.A. Salvatore. He very much knows more words, knows how to use them. Just because I think there's problems with Lies of Lochlamora doesn't make it a worse book than the Dark Elf trilogy. And I think there's like that is as close as you can get to objective statements about books in a lot of ways. Now that's part of the problem, right? It's like we have people like that. I don't know. For example, Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, with his 100,000 subscribers, he talks about how the Dark Elf trilogy is great and has great characters and interesting world building and fantastic action and all of this stuff and how it's a great book. And it's like, no, or we have like potentially tens of thousands of people watching that. And that's a problem. Yeah, I agree, Daniel. That's the point. Like that makes engaging with the sexism and the misogyny in Wheel of Time so fascinating because you can tell that Jordan believes he's doing the right thing. He's just completely not getting it, which makes it so hard to argue that because a lot of people, when you talk to them about it, it's like, oh, Robert Jordan wanted strong female characters. I'm like, there's a bunch of asterisks I would have on that one. Um, Also, strong female characters does not mean you can't be a sexist, right? Hey, Liam, how are you doing today? Sorry to be talking about Drizzt again. I know that's an interesting thing. Jared, the fantasy thinker, asked if anyone has read like newer Drizzt books. I said that I hope it will take you at least a decade to catch up to Salvatore because I don't want you to suffer. But like, if do you know anything about whether his writing has become less problematic and depictions of racism and sexual other racist stuff has vanished over time, or is it, from your knowledge of Forgotten Realms, do you think it's still a problem? If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. I just thought now that you're here, I'll ask you. It's spreading the misery of Drizzt. Hey John, how you doing? Still hungover, I assume. You're at work. So hi, Liam. Yeah, sorry, I know there's an audio issue. I tried to figure out what it is. With my limited capacities, I guess next week. I'm recording on my phone tonight. I'm using my webcam and my desktop microphone. So I assume it must be an issue with the desktop microphone, which I really, really hope not right, but it's just a cable issue. I'll figure it out as soon as I, get myself into cable on Tuesday, because Monday all the stores are closed. We will see, because yeah, it's a bit of a problem. All my technology dying on me. Maybe it's a drought curse. Wow, chat is moving so fast that I'm having problems catching up. One of these days, I will get myself a full new tech setup, and then things will be easier, like faster computer and everything. Wouldn't that be fun? Anyway, and yeah, hi Paramita. I'm glad you can make it. I'm sorry that I'm currently aimlessly scrolling through the entire thing. When I got sidetracked talking about the comparison between Jordan and R.A. Salvatore. Yeah. Also, hi Bex. I hope you're doing as good as you can do during these trying times. So, hope you're doing okay. Now let me come back to the chat and figure stuff out. Anyway, I'll just I will regret this. Let's move beyond Drizzt things unless you really have more Drizzt questions. Oh, it's painful. Finally we're back to like an actual working chat. That's nice. Hey, Price of Iron, nice to see you too. I'm pretty sure it was a drought curse that broke my camera and possibly is affecting my microphone. I should be nice to bad books for a change. It might work. Maybe I could even have like a collab talking about the beautiful prose of Drizzt novels with Mike or something. A book that I read in 2023 that surprised me, Paramita. Now that's an interesting question. I don't think I get surprised much by books. I would definitely mention Spear by Nikolai Griffith, which was the first Griffith I know. Ori told me to read her before, and Jeroen told me to read Spear. I think Jeroen told me. You told me. And it's been a while since like something just clicked with me this quickly. So I guess that's sort of like maybe a bit of a surprise. Maybe also the Chuck Tingle novel, the what's it called, Camp Damascus, because I've obviously read some of Tingle's weird queer erotica stuff, dinosaur erotica, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong, it's really fun, but I didn't know what to expect when he said that he would write a full horror novel. So that was a pleasant surprise to see that. Beyond that, I guess I'm just too jaded to get surprised. No. So I think Spear in a very positive way because it just introduced me to something, it's rare that I discover new authors where I'm like, wow, this is awesome. This is a favorite author of mine from now on. That hasn't happened in a long time. So that's good. And Chuck Tingle, just because I had no idea what to expect, and it turned out to be good. So that's neat, I think. And I hope I'll find some of these surprising things next year, but who knows? Can't be BattleTech now. Yep. I mean, I think that's part of the interesting thing with the Drizzt novels, that within a lot of the gaming tie-in novels of the late 80s and early 90s, even within that field, the Salvatore novels, on the one hand, are probably the most successful ones. Maybe the Dragonlance stuff is more successful. I'm not quite sure, but Drizzt is incredibly successful, and it's still markedly worse than anything else. And the question is like, why are they so successful when there's all this other stuff out there that technically is more interesting, it does better things, does everything better, but why are people going for Drizzt? Liam has read Lord of the Shattered Land, Jeroen. I think he enjoyed it. Um, so yeah, I guess it's good. Yeah, that's interesting that you did in fact enjoy The Crossing and The Road. I mean, they're also very different books in a lot of ways, but yeah, I'm glad you found your way into the Cormac McCarthy realm, at least parts of it that work. And yeah, I did really enjoy is probably the wrong word, but I really appreciate his last two novels last year, The Passenger and Stella Maris. I did really enjoy those. Well, I said like not enjoy, but they moved me. So it's always nice to see people, appreciating new authors or finding a way into, finding a way to appreciate an author that they have previously struggled with. I know you obviously still struggle with something like Blood Meridian, understandably. Um, well, also none of the characters in Icewind Dale, in the Icewind Dale trilogy, are even remotely likable. Oh, the Sometimes Lofty Towers. I still need to read that. I know you've talked about it so many times, Lee, and I'm always ignoring it because I'm really good at ignoring advice and recommendations of books. Not something that I do well with. Um, yeah, Sword and Sorcery can be trash. I don't think Sword and Sorcery is trashy in that regard. I think a lot of it is just that our perceptions of fantasy have shifted so much from, say, the Clark Ashton Smith stuff from the 1930s and the Robert E. Howard stuff from the 1930s to what like how we expect things to be written these days, how we expect things to be, the kind of stories we expect, but also the way stuff is written. And yeah, it's an interesting question of whether you can write something that is fundamentally sword and sorcery, but also feels contemporary. Um, or if there are certain aspects to sword and sorcery that have to be sort of archaic in a lot of ways, archaic within the genre, I guess. If that makes any sense, it's just something I'm certainly wondering about, but I have no answer on that. The same thing like whether it's possible to write actual novels in science in sword and sorcery, or whether the genre of or the format of a short story is sort of integral to that very specific sword and sorcery feeling. I feel sword and sorcery, despite having fairly clear definitions of what it is and what it isn't, for me, sword and sorcery is very much a feeling, and probably that's once again because I read a lot of these older books, right? And I'm like, well, maybe maybe that feeling is just nostalgia for more Conan stories, which I'm not going to get. And sometimes it's difficult to kind of free yourself, or for me at least, to free myself from these expectations or that specific feeling of being 15 and reading Conan for the first time. It's like that's what I want from sword and sorcery. I will never get that because I'm no longer 15, and I cannot read on the Tower of the Elephant for the first time again. That's just for gone. Yeah, it's like yeah, it's difficult to guess what Paramita likes in books. I've realized that myself. I can make guesses about books where I'm pretty sure you don't like them, but I have no idea what you like. I can just like sometimes tell that this will probably not work for you. But beyond that, so I know what not to recommend. God, I press the button that says new comments, which usually leads to my computer going pretty crazy. So yeah, goals for next year, I guess, will be figuring my technology problems out, figuring out my technology problems, finding a way to buy a new computer, a faster computer, and proper gear. But that's like another thing, right? It's like I've not done these things before because I don't I don't want to invest a lot of money into something where I'm always scared I'll just like drop the entire project immediately because I'm really good at giving up on projects. So I didn't feel like investing heavily into video equipment or whatever. So a lot of my stuff is just really shitty. And I guess it'll take a lot of hairstyling sponsorships before I can afford things. Oh, the Grim Dwarf. Yeah, the Grim Dwarf is really cool. And I will send you something, Joe, that I'll write for you for a later Grim Dwarf edition. I have an idea. It will be more sci-fi-ish. If I manage to write it with a straight face, it may still involve giraffe people, so Jerome can actually contribute illustrations. Also, Paramita, I thought your favorite series of 2023 was Sun Eater, wasn't it? Well, anyway, yeah, the Sun Eater thing. I will not read Sun Eater next year. I think, but that's the thing. I will read, and I've said that before. I will definitely read a lot of what's it called, Cosmere, Brandon Sanderson next year. Next year will be the year of Brandon Sanderson for me. So, Matt, I am sorry. I will continue reading bad books, I guess. But I have made a list of books that I will definitely read next year that are coming out in 2024 that I'm excited about. That will be really cool books, and maybe I'll manage to actually record it as a video. Maybe. Otherwise, there will definitely be, a new Peter S. Beagle novel called "I'm Afraid You Have Dragons," and there is a new Alistair Reynolds coming out in January. There's Dogmagog by what's his name, Steve Moon, someone Moon. I'm always confusing Pete Moon and Steve Moon for some reason. And there's a new Paolo Bacigalupi novel coming out in August that I'm really excited about. A new Nalo Hopkinson one. So I will read some good books as well, but there will be a lot of Sanderson, and I've already decided, I'll read Elantris, and I'll read Mistborn Era 1, and then I'll read Warbreaker, and then I'll read Mistborn Era 2, and then I'll read Stormlight. So I'm done with Stormlight when that fifth Stormlight comes out. And after that, I will never, ever touch Brandon Sanderson again. because by then I'll be so through with that stuff. Witchy Eye, what's that? I don't know that, but if you tell me to read it, you may have a reason. I just don't know what kind of reason it is. It may be a devilish one. Berserk better than Sun Eater? Wait until I tell that to Christopher Rourke. Not that I have any contact with him, but, I am deeply shocked now. Anyway, so yeah, lots of Sanderson. If anyone feels like joining me for some Sanderson conversations or Sanderson readings, please let me know. I do very much appreciate the idea of talking through books with other people. When I asked people who like Wheel of Time to come on and talk about Wheel of Time with me, no one did. I wonder why. But I hope that maybe for Sanderson, I can find some people that want to talk Sanderson either critically or try to explain to me why I'm getting it all wrong. I would be willing to do that as well. But in case any of you want to read any of the other books that I plan to read for 2023, so maybe I should actually make that video of books that are coming out next year that I want to read. And if anyone feels like joining me for a buddy read conversation, whatever, message me and figure out how to do that, because I'm really bad at organizing things, as you may have noticed. So maybe we'll have to work through that, but yeah. I will not read 26 Cosmere novels. Oh, wait, did I miscalculate that? Wait, that's like 3 Mistborn, 4 Mistborn, that's 7 Mistborn, 5 Stormlight, that's 12. 14. I'll read 14 out of the 26 novels. And I will read Sun Eater at some point. Probably. We will see. But maybe I'll just wait for it to be finished. Also, I will only read one thing per year that I'm relatively sure I will be not having fun. 2022, that was Wheel of Time, and in 2023, it turned out to be Drizzt. I'll tell a lie, I did also read Dan Simmons last year. So maybe, I don't know, I'll try to not do too much of that stuff and maybe read fun things again. I should probably also start rereading Malazan at any point now, because, I keep forgetting stuff, and there's stuff I want to talk about with the Malazan Book of the Fall, and the problem is, like, whenever I'm not actively reading a book, I don't remember enough of these books to actually make the kind of videos I want to make. So I need to sort of constantly read Malazan to keep making Malazan videos. Hey Dan, yeah, I've heard people say that Sun Eater is awesome. The problem is, like, the more people go and say Sun Eater is awesome, the more I'm scared to read it, because I'm worried that I think that I will not actually think it's awesome, and then I'll once again be the one guy in the corner going, no, you're all getting it wrong. It's actually bad. And there's only so much of that I can do. I can do that with Driz because I have very strong convictions that these books are objectively bad and somewhat harmful. So I can muster enough motivation to be angry about them. But with Rocchio being the kind of booktube favorite he's at the moment and being active on servers himself, do I need that level of conflict in my life at the moment? And the answer is no. Whereas, pissing off Sanderson is easy because Sanderson won't notice. Sanderson's fans probably won't watch my videos anyway, so I'm safe there. I can be mean to Sanderson without any repercussions. I'm not sure I can do that with Christopher Rocchio because he's much closer, and right now I don't feel well armed enough for that kind of conflict. But then again, my old flatmate is planning to play some Fading Suns tabletop RPG, and I've heard that is very, very similar to Sun Eater. So maybe I'll change my mind at some point. And yes, I still need to read fucking Too Like the Lightning. I'm really bad. We wanted to do like a buddy read with Katya and Barsha from Reading by the Rainy Mountain, and then me being bad at organizing stuff or actually starting books because I get sidetracked by other books and then even more other books and stuff like that, and so forth. It kind of stalled, so I'm still not actually reading Ada Palm, and I feel so bad about it at this point. I'm scared to pick it up now, I guess. It'll happen at some point. So yeah, I guess I'll do my thing with Sanderson next year. I've already collected some other books on the Mormon Church and its connections to American politics and to white supremacist organizations in the U.S. and things like that. And I'll certainly we'll look into Mormon theology to see how these things actually impact Sanderson's writing. This conversation right now feels really like the Grim Dwarf Writers Support Group, where everyone goes like, "Well, I need to finish a story for Grim Dwarf," which is kind of funny. I guess the next Grim Dwarf editions will be filled with excellent stories. Joe will have to come up with a I don't know, daily schedule or something to actually make room for all the awesome stories we're all going to write about giraffe people. Yeah, also, it's definitely possible that I'll become best friends with Rockio. I doubt it. But it's definitely possible. I think it's once again it's the framing that so many people kind of compare it with the New Sun and Dune. And while I do have my issues with Dune and have some issues with the New Sun, that's the kind of phrase that can only make a book fail for me. Because those are some really, really tough books to live up to. You know what I mean? And that's a problem. Oh gods. You're saying the ascent is very literal in that book, Dan. I don't know. I've not read Books of Babel because it just didn't sound interesting. Like, so there is that power of Babel, and the guy loses his wife, and then he just wanders around. It's like, in my mind, I think the Tower of Babel in in the description of the books of Babel is basically like a huge ass IKEA, and you lose your girlfriend, partner, whatever, because someone went to like the kitchen part of the store, and you just got stuck with something else. And then you're wondering that huge ass fucking IKEA trying to find that person again. Um, I realize that's not exactly how books of Babel work, but sort of that's the image I have in my brain. I try to not destroy that. It would be really funny to turn that into like a fantasy story, lost in IKEA. See, here's the thing. I have read most of the books of Babel, obviously, as we just discovered. I think Babel is not a bad book. It's not a book written for me. I realized that very quickly, and it's one of the reasons why I haven't picked up Yellowface yet, because I'm not sure if Rebecca Kwong's writing is something I can deal with. But I think Babel is a necessary book because a lot of people are not aware of all the stuff that she's putting in there. So it makes sense to have a book targeted, especially using her popularity that she has sort of gained in parts of BookTube and parts of Book Talk and younger readers, using that popularity to actually explain shit about the Opium Wars and British colonialism. Yeah, I'm all for it. More power to her. I don't know. Yes, I maybe have read too much history books on the subject already at this point. Okay, so it is basically in an IKEA. Thanks for clearing that up. I guess I don't need to read that. I've had that experience before. I just wonder if he actually makes his way to the place where they sell the hot dogs and the meatball, the Swedish meatball. That would be really cool. It's interesting that you're making all these deals down there, Dan and Paramita. Because here's the thing: if I decide to read Sun Eater, I will read the entire thing. I'm really bad at DNFing, by which I mean I haven't DNF'd any book ever. I think, and there's only one series so far where I have not gone beyond the first book. That series is, of course, The Sword of Truth, where I only read Wizard's First Rule and Will Not Return. But then I bought that one. I got that one at a sale or something. It was super cheap, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll try it. And yeah, no. So yeah, if I start Sun Eater, it'll be the entire thing, not just one book. It may still be very bad. Thanks, Dan. I will read Sun Eater in 2025, maybe. I mean, when's that series supposed to end? I'm sorry, Kanya. I'm really not good at DNFing books. I'm just not good at it. If it helps, I have not yet finished Rebel's Creed by Daniel Green. It's been on my phone for like 2 years now, and it's it's still as a currently reading in my Goodreads listing. And I definitely will finish that book, but I always get sidetracked by something more interesting. But I will finish it. There's a very specific kind of compulsive streak to my reading habits. that kind of requires me to do these. All right, then if it ends in 2025, then I'll read Sun Eater in 2025. If if the planet still exists, I still exist, I try to not make predictions for over a year. Although in 2025, I'm hoping for the Winds of Winter, of course, and then I'll actually reread all of Son of Ice and Fire when Winds of Winter gets announced, so we know when it will actually come out. Because I am in the when, not if. Just to be clear, I will not read every single Cosmere book. I made that list of, Mantras, Mistborn, Warbreaker, and Stormlight, and that's all I need. I will not read all the other stuff that is supposedly also part of the Cosmere and whatever. I will not read Empire of the Vampire. I hate book titles that rhyme. Also, I'm not a vampire fan. Yeah, right. Right price of iron. That's the point. It's like if people go like, "Oh, Dune," yeah, that's the same thing as if like a fantasy writer goes like, "You know what? I was heavily inspired by Lord of the Rings." And I'm like, "Of course you were. Of course you were." That's not telling me anything at this point. Um, that's kind of the problem. But I don't know. Sun Eater makes me just like I have this gut feeling that I'll really, really be disappointed with it, if that makes any sense. That fear of disappointment. See, here's the thing, Daniel. I bought Rebel's Creed back then, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna read it because I spent money on it. And unhauling audiobooks is kind of difficult, so I'm stuck with it, and now I need to read it because I don't have that much money. So if I bought a book, it's gonna get read. And to be fair, I did actually think that Breach of Peace was not that bad. I know, it's easy to shit on Daniel Green. Um, it's certainly not, the best book I've ever read, but you know, I've read worse. I'm currently reading far worse. So credit where credit's due for like a debut novella. It was pretty solid. See, you can, Bex, you're right. And I will read The Bell Jar. I definitely, I mean, it's something I wanted to read for a while, so that will happen. The thing is, I don't have a TBR. I'd always avoided TBRs. I have vague ideas of what I will do, and then I get, sidetracked like I did earlier this month when I was, oh, I'm gonna read To Like the Lightning, and then I read All Quiet on the Western Front and Storm of Steel and Starship Troopers and way too much stuff about World War One instead. Now I still need to figure out what to do with that, but it sort of maybe makes me read Catherine Arden in January or whenever the One Hand of Ghosts comes out. One Hands of Ghosts comes out. Way too many S's in that sentence. So yeah, I don't have a TBR, and I'm glad I don't have a TBR. But as I said, I will read Machine Vendetta in January because someone has to talk about Alistair Reynolds. And by someone, I mean someone who's not Moid from Media Deathfall. There has to be more than one person, right? And there's still a bunch of books from 2023 that I want to read, like In Ascension, which I've been assured by Jeroen is a very, very good book indeed. And I want to read The Saint of Bright Doors by someone from Sri Lanka whose name I really, really can't pronounce. So I wanted to try. But it sounds interesting, and I'm going to read it. And then maybe I'll read, Machine Vendetta, Gog Magog by the Moon Guy and the other guy. And I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons by Peter S. Beagle. And definitely the new Paolo Bacigalupi, because I just really enjoy Bacigalupi's writing when he writes for adults. So something in magical, totally not Venice or Florence, but it also has dragons, but also organized crime. Sounds cool. Okay, so in all seriousness, also when it comes to Empire of the Vampire, here's the thing: I watched Reads with Rachel, so-called review of the book, and I don't think I would have anything meaningful to say about it with books that I don't like. If I don't have anything meaningful to say, I'm just like think it's shit. That's not worth making a review about it. I'm not that kind of reviewer, and I'd like to have like something with a bit of substance to say about it. And I don't think Empire of the Vampire is that kind of book. I don't think it aims to be that, wants to be that kind of book either, which I think is fine. So I don't know if that's worth doing that. But here's a fun thing. I know Empire of the Vampire has like all kind of illustrations, right? They the illustrator is like linked as an author, well, as an illustrator, the audiobooks as well. I'm like, do you have like image descriptions, or how are you doing that? Or maybe you can download the images as a PDF. I don't know. Like, I didn't check. I just saw that Empire of the Vampire has Jay Kristoff and someone illustrations. I'm like, this is an audiobook. You don't do illustrations. Although it would be interesting to, link the images to the time code within the audio text to display them on your app or whatever. I'm pretty sure you can do that, but I don't think they do. Yeah, exactly. Also, Reach of Peace is totally fine for a debut. And he does something really well, or not well, but he's clever about something. He goes with a murder mystery kind of crime fiction thing, which has a very specific, rigid structure. You come up with that part of the structure, like here's the crime, here's the murder, here's the clues. You put those things into place, and you have very rigid structure. You can write along. It's sort of like a trellis that you use for plants. If you have like the kind of plants like vines that you need to sort of build away. You can write your prose along that trellis of the plot with a murder mystery or a heist fiction or a crime fiction. A lot of ways that a more sprawling epic fantasy, for example, doesn't actually provide. So for a debut, to go with a shorter thing like a novella and something that has a very specific kind of structure from the get-go is a really good way to write something and actually get it done as a debut to just gain experience as a writer. I think that's really clever. And I mean, yeah, sometimes you can just actually go and like, well, that was well done. I may disagree with you on all your wheel of time takes, but you got that part right. That's good. French words. Um, do French words make for substance? I mean, I've read Ilium and Olympus by Dan Simmons, and he quotes Marcel Proust all the time. And I'm pretty sure that doesn't actually add to the substance of the novel. Once again, behind, which is good. I mean, to be fair, y'all talking so much that I can't actually follow is probably a good sign. Um, so, wait, I got confused by French words. A parallel world builder. Here's the thing, though, when we talk about French words that make no sense, um, one Robert A., I assume, Anton Salvatore uses that fucking trick in his really bad Drizzt fictions. See, and I didn't even talk about that yet in videos. There is an academy in Mentor. It's basically magic school where people, I don't know, get killed randomly because it's the cruelest thing ever, and then they don't even get to fuck dragons. So, maybe that's the reason it's not that popular anymore. My point, however, is that it has like the wizard school, it has the fighter school, and it has the priestess school. Obviously, the priestess school is called Arak something because it's all about spiders, and the wizard school is called Sorcerer. It's all about sorcery, but we need to make it sound pseudo French because that makes it sound more evil, and I guess I have to agree with that. And the fighter school is called Melee something. And yes, the word melee is, of course, a very French word, as you may have guessed from the slanting on the. So yeah, French words make things worse. Is my point. Anyway, sorry for bringing it back to Chris. I am unfortunately very much haunted by that. I still have 7, 8 books to go. And there's some really bad and boring stuff in there that I remember being in there. Like our very talented Mr. Salvatore tackling the idea of trauma and alcoholism. You know, he sounds like the person qualified to do that. Nevernight is the one that everyone talks about. One of the teenage girls getting a magic boob job for reasons, and other people being really upset about that. I think that's all I know about Nevernight. Also, it's Girl Assassins, and I guess I constantly confuse it with the Night Angel thing from Brent Weeks, which was also not very good. Oh, that's a good question, Jerome, because I haven't read the Dandelion Dynasty yet. I'm always like, is this something I might enjoy? Or is this something that will really not work for me? Yeah, also, far better than Night Angel is not that hard, to be honest. Are you asking me how fast I'm listening to these books, Kaya, or was that meant for someone else? I'm listening to one per day. They are not very long, they're like 10 hours each. And they are narrated relatively slowly so I can speed it up real fast. But one of the most dramatic things, and I talked about that yesterday in our Player of Games conversation with also Ori, one of the most dramatic things about the fucking Drizzt audiobooks, they're all narrated by the same guy who narrates all the Endymion and other audiobooks by Dan Simmons. It's bad. It's bad. But I can listen to them at like double speed or even more than double speed, so I can get through one per day, which does help. Here's the thing. Oh, so forget about the grace of kings or the way of kings. The important one is the road of kings. Fucking biggest. Yeah, you need abracadabra. uh, Thanks for that one. That definitely made the day worthwhile. I guess that's a question for Jay Christoph. And looking at Jay Christoph's work so far, I also think that he will probably have a very specific answer to that. It will probably be yes. I don't know, but that's like an interesting thing. Like, why do people find assassins so interesting as characters? I've never been into assassins. I don't know. And that weird thing that like Night Angel does and a lot of other stuff. I mean, I guess I can live with Fitz with the Farsia trilogy. I can guess kind of can live with that sort of form of assassin, but that whole idea of assassins being these super ultra kind of that kind of it's one of the things that really annoys me even in Guardians of the Moon. It's like, why did Assassin's Guild suck? No society ever needs an Assassin's Guild, and they don't work in any sense. They're just there so one player in your tabletop RPG group can play the really mean badass killer. That's the only reason why we have assassins and assassin schools and assassin guilds in fantasy. And we should kind of do away with them because fuck assassins. The Road of Kings is well, it's an excellent Manila Road song. It's also very Conan relevant. So, yeah. Yeah, I know I'm right about Assassins, John. I've played D&D. I've run D&D. Which is why the Assassin's Guild in Discord is so good because it's so ridiculous with the Assassin's Guild there and being all gentlemen wearing black, being cool, and and being like a gentleman's boarding school with everything that comes with that, inclusive, and well, including racist patronizing apparently. So yeah, I don't know. Assassins Especially organized assassins don't make any sense. Yeah, the assassins in Discord are really good. Seriously, one of the best Discord sequences from a just from like the way Pratchett sets the scene up is the opening part of Pyramids. Pyramids is not necessarily Pratchett's best book, but the opening sequence, which is one of the assassins doing his sort of final exam kind of thing, practical exam, so he has to go to this place and well, I'll probably kill someone. But the way it's described, the way he writes it, the way he sets up the different scenes with flashbacks about his past that bring him to the point where he's doing his final exam at the assassin school. It's incredibly well done, just from like the way the pacing works, the way it's set up, the way he builds, has this action parkour style running across the city, like the roofs, jumping from roof to roof, and having mishaps on the way and so forth, and then cutting back to his past and so forth. It's really, really well done. And like, if you want to, if you want to write something and you want to see how to do uh, like a setup for a character that is, something that shows them being badass at what they do, while including these flashbacks to kind of tell that backstory. That's one of the best examples out there for exactly that way of doing narrative. Incredibly good, much better than the rest of the book. I mean, I do still love the rest of the book because it has the camel mathematicians, which are really good. The best mathematician on Discord, Camel, is called You Bastard. I don't think all assassins are sexy. I think that's a more modern development. It's certainly a Night Angel and Never Night development, having sexy teenage assassin, which is interesting because when you think about it, paying kids to kill other people, we have a word for that, right? And if there's more than one, we just call them child soldiers and think it's really, really terrible. But if we make them sexy and give them magic boob jobs and let them kill people, and suddenly they're assassins and they're cool. So yeah. All right. Here's an important question because it's 10:30. We've been doing this for 90 minutes, and I'm certainly good for another beer, just like Bex. Questions: are you good for another beer as well, or do you want to end this and go back to doing meaningful things in your lives? Because if we're going to do like a bit more, talk about another beer and assassin stuff, I'll need to take a quick break because I've been drinking way too much of the most German of soft drinks, that being these incredibly cheap store brand badass apple spritzer things, which I accidentally bought because I need to, I need some bottles to bring meat to a party tomorrow. And I bought 6 liters of that stuff, 4 bottles. I've been drinking them all day. I'm running, I'm under pressure, so to speak. All right, we'll do that. I'll be back in a minute. You talk to each other, make devious plans for my TBR that I will not actually have, and I'll be back, and then we'll talk a bit more, and then we'll end it for this year. All right, I did the more productive form of fridging because I got out with a beer. And yes, I can do that because that's called male privilege, I guess. Anyway, cheers, everybody. I'm sorry about that one, but I've been recently thinking a lot about the refrigerator monologues by Catherine Valente and why I really like that book. And so that's pretty much happened. Anyway, here's another thing. So I obviously really enjoyed the conversation I had with Nicola. I was thinking about doing more of these kind of conversations with authors if they're willing to just hang out for a while and chill and talk about stuff, stuff in their lives and uh, beyond just the specific book that I just published. So if you could pick, which kind of authors would you say I should talk to if I, no holds barred, if there were no actual restrictions? Obviously, chance of Sanderson showing up and talking with me is are limited, but like, what kind of authors would you say are like dream authors for me to hang out with and have a beer? Or in the case of Sanderson, a Diet Coke. Hey, Britton, how you doing? Oh, well, Joe, I'll show up and I'll come up with let's workshop some questions for Joe now, so he can actually prepare. Wouldn't that be a cool idea? um, what's the speed of a laden swallow? That works, right? That's a question you can answer, Joe, right? Also, can I just say that like drinking 6 liters or like 5 liters in a bit of that apple stuff one day is not a good idea. um, a study on fantasy assassins also. I don't know, man. I think the interesting idea is like where that idea of the assassin or the cool assassin kind of comes from. Is that sort of like the ninja assassin thing kind of um, drifting in from like Japanese culture, becoming more popular in like the 1980s, 70s, 80s, or whatever? Or has it been around because there's the Slayers in Lockmore and with Catherine and the Grey Mouse, but they're more like fighters. They're just like hired. They're like a general security guys. They're like the Blackwater of Lockmore, basically. So they're not necessarily assassins. And I'm like, I have no idea when the first assassins showed up in fantasy. I mean, obviously in Dungeons and Dragons, I think in like AD&D first edition, you got assassins as a new class. It might have been AD&D, and it's only like an additional source book. It's not, full of things. So I'm wondering where that kind of comes from. Yeah, of course. I don't know. Yeah, Robin Hood, interesting. The other things I would talk to Robin Hood, of course. I would want to actually read more of her books before I actually talk to her. You know what I mean? That's a very good question for an indie author, also, right there. I don't know. Have you read After the Revolution by Robert Evans also? As a anarchist sci-fi book. Thank you, Joe. That's exactly how you should answer that question. As a king, you know these kind of things, right? Oh, right. Amanda and Epic Tales had their talk earlier. I found out about it like 5 minutes before I started. I was like, wait, that's like Pacific Standard. I have no idea what that is like. Full on European colonizer talk. Atanasio, I still haven't read him. It's more like one of those like I'm aware and I should, you know. Um, the state of Bern. It's only a city, Joe. It's only a city. Maybe a canton. But I appreciate the job. So, I don't know if like contacting authors is so difficult. I don't know if Robin Hobb, for example, would actually even feel like talking to authors. But yeah, interesting. What I God, I'm lost in the conversation again. See, I've never read anything of Beagle. I've never read anything like Six of Crows, any of the Ninth House. Is that also there? I think. I've never read any of these books. I know they're popular. I also feel like they're not written for people like me. Which is not a criticism. It's more like me recognizing that I will. Okay, Britain, I have to ask this. The video has blown up. What? Has blown up what? Central banks, government buildings? That's kind of the important part, right? There's an interesting thing though with the assassin, right? It's like something I've really wanted to talk about at some point, but I'm still lacking sort of like a key or like more background understanding. Um, that assassins, like murder and violence and killing people, is sort of like the go-to solution for all problems in fantasy. And maybe it's because I'm reading the Drizzt novels right now that are where everything is solved by violence. And like a lot of other fantasies also solving most problems through violence, and all conflict is usually solved, through violence. And like that's pretty fucking bleak. Is there a way to, write fantasy and have meaningful conflict that is not solved by having a giant fucking battle or assassins killing someone in a incredibly well choreographed martial arts showdown? Could people maybe talk to each other? Is that still fantasy? Is that possible without them running a, I don't know, coffee shop? Sorry, I'm trying to catch up with your conversations. Uh, Getting confused there. But yeah, that question of violence is something that I've been thinking about all the way back since I did like my last video. Why is every conflict always solved by violence? Because that's something that sets like fantasy apart from, or most fantasy apart from most other genres. Even within science fiction, it's not just killing all your enemies and then like a giant battle and one person, one side wins and the other loses. Like even most sci-fi doesn't end that way. I mean, except of course Starship Troopers. Yeah, never mind. It's Starship Troopers. It's a bad book. So it's an interesting book, but it's a bad book. What do you mean by be consistent in their principles? Uh, I haven't heard Alan say that, but I rarely watch Alan. I know that's a bit of a synonym for the terms, but yeah, I rarely watch Alan. Yeah, I had to drink all that Apple stuff, so I have empty bottles, so I can bring me to the New Year's Eve party that I will have with my old flatmate and my even older flatmate and people I went to study computer science with. And all of those people ended up in that offline book club that I started like I don't know a decade ago. That made me read a When Monsters Roar and Angels Sing, a short sociology of heavy metal that I read yesterday, and it's not a good book. I am I am angry at it, but I talked about it yesterday. Now I meet all those people tomorrow. I'll bring meat, other people bring stuff, and drink and plan tabletop role playing game campaigns for the next week or month or whatever. No, Pratchett has not done that kind of assassin. He would not call those kind of people assassins. He would just call those people heroes, I think. Maybe barbarian hero, but his assassins are all like snobby upper class. They're basically Eden. They're basically your the kind of place that produces prime ministers for patricians in this regard, possibly including all the weird shit. I have to agree with Bex. People are inconsistent. It's kind of the hallmark of being human, is being inconsistent, I think, which is sad, but just the way it is, I guess. Yeah. So if Joe goes over there, I guess we'll just like wind things down here in a bit, and then we'll just all walk over, come over to Joe's state of burn, and we can talk about. We can ask him all kinds of stuff about Swiss politics and see if he wants to answer those questions. I think that sounds like a good idea. All right, Brett. You asked that. You made that comment. We're going to talk about fucking leftists taking the high road. You asked for it, and this is Marxist malcontent, so we'll talk about that. There's a difference between individual cruelty and individual injustice and systemic oppression. There's a massive difference between those two. It's called a category difference. And it's important to understand that capitalism is a system that we as a species have built for us in the West, have then forced upon all kinds of other societies by, at gunpoint from time to time, not to put to find a point on it, and by genocide and all kinds of other measures. It's a systemic thing that will destroy us all, even those who are currently profiteering from it. Most of us. That's systemic. That does not excuse, a fucking Stalin being Stalin or a Kim Il Sung, Kim Jong Il from being Kim Jong Il. But these are not leftist structures, because leftist structures are, sort of a bit of an oxymoron in a lot of ways. These are individuals, and it's important to understand the difference. The hey, you've got bad guys is not an argument if the other argument is this system is fucked and we need to change it. I'm not complaining about Elon Musk being a bad guy in that way. I'm complaining about capitalism being a system that makes it possible for people like Elon Musk to become Elon Musk. And that's a difference. It's a fundamental difference that we need to be aware of. And that's where the high road lies. Understanding the difference between systemic oppression and individual bad guys. And there's no argument about that. That does not mean you should defend the individual assholes. I know there's people in, all over the place that go out of their way to defend people like Stalin, defend the Soviet Union in all kinds of ways. Like, they're wrong. They are wrong, but that does not mean you should go and not criticize a system that is fucked up and will lead to more and more suffering and destroy the planet. Because it is built that way. The system that we're talking about is a system that only cares about maximizing profit. And if it needs humans for that, it'll make possible for humans to sort of be around as long as possible. As soon as we don't need humans, or that many humans, to maximize profits, that system does not care about humans existing. And that's the thing we need to understand, that we've built a system, we've built a machine that does not care about us as people, that doesn't care about the planet. It doesn't care about any of these things. And yes, there are people in charge of it, sort of, but they are not actually in charge. That's where something like structural anti-Semitism kind of comes in. Well, the guys running the banks are evil. Like, yeah, they're probably not the nicest people around, but that's not the point. You can replace those people. The system will keep going. The system will keep destroying the planet. The system will keep creating misery and oppression and suffering all the fucking time. It's that system that we're talking about. It's not about individuals. We can talk about individuals and figure out which side has more bastards. And I'm still pretty sure that, the right will end up with more bastards. But we're talking about systems. And it's important to make that distinction and not go like, you got Stalin, we got capitalism. That's not how that works. Okay. Anyway, rant over. I just needed to say that because I think it's important to be aware of that. Because it makes discussions so difficult when we suddenly compare individuals to systems, try to, rack up body counts and compare body counts. That's not productive. That's not what it's about. Yeah, Britain. Of course, people have died under what you might call leftist system. But if you look, the Soviet Union is not a leftist system. The Soviet Union was an authoritarian system. So is North Korea. Yes, they spout terms of Marxist, Leninist, and so forth elements, but that does not necessarily make them leftist in any meaningful way. People die in those systems as well, but there's a fundamental difference between a system that is completely out of control because it does not need humans to work as a system. Leftist systems don't work like that, and it's important to understand that. And when you started out, you're talking about like the high road of bad guys, and that's what I started out. Yes, I want to abolish capitalism. Maybe not today, but in the long run, I think we need to move beyond what we have right now. The form of neoliberal capitalism, the way we have it right now, is not going to work in the long run because it does actually cause a lot of damage to the planet in ways that well, bad for like everyone involved that has no say in what kind of system we're actually using. That's kind of bad in the long run. I mean, actually bad right now because we already have climate change refugees and people like that are suffering because someone somewhere, well, not someone somewhere, but like a system that is built on maximizing profits does not care if we, blast more gas into the atmosphere to raise the temperature of the globe even more. And people are not necessarily, at least the people that are suffering from that, are not necessarily to that system because they're not actually contributing enough profits. That's the problem that we have right now. And that's not even a right and left thing. Capitalism is not a politically right thing. It's just a system that's been built by accident and that we're in right now. And it's difficult to move beyond that because it has taken over so much of our imagination. In a lot of ways, it's one of those things to bring it back to fiction. Right? So much science fiction that we read these days, even science fiction in the far future, has capitalist systems actually basically being around. Society in the far future is mostly capitalist these days. It is so, cyberpunk, but cyberpunk is a dystopia. You're not supposed to like the cyberpunk future. But even sort of positive futures are mostly capitalist. And that's a problem because science fiction should open up the realms of imagination, give us alternatives. They may be wrong, but we should think about them. And that's why The Culture by Ian Banks is so important because it's socialist, it's anarchist, and it's a lot of other things, but it's not capitalist. We need to open up these spaces for imagination, for fantasy, for exploring ideas. And that's, I think, the largest problem that capitalism has brought in the realm of fiction, especially in the realm of speculative fiction, is that it has that we have shut down a lot of these aspects of imagination, where we may have like all kinds of weird technology, but apparently it's still basically corporations running everything. People, needing money to survive for all kinds of things. Why? Why don't we think about like actual systems? And I suspect it's one of the self-defense mechanisms of the system that we build that stops us thinking about that system. Which I guess is one of the reasons why you should go and read Peter Bohr's Society of the Spectacle, because it may have some things to say about that. I think it is not just you, it's my microphone being slowly dying. Yeah, I still need to read Cloud Atlas. I have it in my Audible library. That's in my Audible library. I haven't actually, read it yet. So I'm very much looking forward to it. All right. So it's 11. I've made my last anti-capitalist rant of the year. I suggest we'll all go over to JCM's State of the Burn, or State of Burn. Let me see if I can actually find a link to that. And then I'll drop a link in in chat, and then you can all go over there, and I'll join you there in chat, and we'll make his, live stream a success. How does that sound? About, being cool to smaller YouTubers within PUBG. I think that's a good idea. I just have to find the link, and hope my computer won't crash. God, there's nothing as frustrating as having really, really slow equipment. I'm still trying to find it. Anyway, and then we'll just move over to there. And next year, I will have better equipment than because this is not how this should be. Here we go. Have I found it? You have no idea how frustrating it is when your computer is slow and you have like ADHD, and like pressing a button comes with like 2 seconds of waiting time before something happens, and your brain's already like down that road, and you want to do the next thing and you can't because everything is just like taking forever. It's highly frustrating. And so let's do that. I don't know if we're all subscribed to Joe. That's the point. It's like, I don't know. I just thought it would be nice to do it like the proper way, make it even possible for anyone else. All right. See you over there at Joe's place. I gotta find it anyway. Why is it on like a different channel? That makes no sense. Anyway, all right. I found it. I think it's not on Joe's channel, which is even worse. There you go. All right. I'll see you over there. All right. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time. Anyway.